key message I try to convey is that there are important things going on in the energy field that have important climate relevance. There is an energy transition going on, and that is very much based on energy efficiency and renewable energy. In the field of renewable energy, we've seen a rapid uptake of renewables, especially in the power sector in recent years, which was driven by technology progress and the reduction of cost that resulted in faster uptake of wind technology and also solar PV technology. And you see now gradually also other technologies coming on stream. And this trend is supported by technology progress, but also by policies. So a lot of governments have now put renewable energy targets in place and also supporting instruments, and that has made a big difference, which has resulted in this accelerated deployment.
And what are, from your perspective, from IRENA's perspective, the main barriers to scaling up renewable energy and technologies even further as we stand in 2013?
Well, we think that by 2030 it should be feasible to achieve a third renewable energy worldwide, and perhaps even more. The main issues are it varies by country. In some countries, fossil fuels are subsidized. Subsidies are still more than $500 billion per year, which is nearly 10 times subsidies for renewables. But that is well intended, but often it misses the target. Second point is that the energy sector is a sector with capital stock with a long lifespan. So if you invest in a coal-fired power plant today, it will run for half a century and perhaps even more. So a lot of investments that have taken place in recent years or that are planned for the coming years in fossil-based generation will lock in part of this capital stock. And that is another important factor that limits the speed at which renewables can be taken up. And then another important factor is lack of understanding of the opportunity. So there's still a lot of misconceptions about that renewables are expensive, which is in many cases not the reality anymore. It's often the cheapest solution. Also a lack of capacity to develop bankable project proposals. So there is a realization at the high level that there is an important renewables opportunity, but the question is, how do you get from that notion to a bankable project proposal with data of sufficient quality and of sufficient scope to convince financiers that this is a viable opportunity?
And moving forward, how is IRENA working with governments to inform them and help them better understand the potential of renewables? Because as you say, many people see it as a big risk. They look at those upfront capital costs and some countries just clearly panic, and some governments think that it's not worth the political gamble to really stake everything on renewables. What is IRENA doing in terms of sort of pushing out and reaching out to governments?
Well, I'll give you a few examples. So one of the instruments we have is a significant budget from the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development. So we have $350 million now for investments into innovative renewable energy projects. The first tranche was announced last January. It was for $50 million, and we got $500 million in projects. So there is strong interest in that, and we're now going through the process of awarding these funds. And then more tranches will follow. Second work is around the Global Renewable Energy Atlas. So the purpose of the Atlas is to make data and renewable energy potentials more widely available, and to ensure the quality of these data and make sure that they're in the end that they result in bankable potential data. On a global level, we're also working on what we call the Remap 2030, which is an assessment of how to achieve a global doubling of the renewable energy share, and what needs to be done by governments to be on that track. Mm-hmm. So these are just a few examples of what we're doing.
And is it a concern that in many energy departments around the world, the kind of fossil fuel mentality is so inbuilt, so part of that these departments' structure and the way they operate, it's very hard for them to make that transition to think we need a new power station, but it's not going to be coal or gas or whatever. We're going to sort of work on a slightly different and more varied share of the energy mix.
Well, government is important, but it's only part of the total picture. There's also the private sector, and the private sector is very much focused on the business case and the economics. So step one is to make sure that the right data are on the table to make a proper evaluation of the case. And if there is a case where renewables is the cost-effective solution, well, then you can take that to government. And if government still doesn't want to do it, then they better come with a story why.
And let's just sort of end on a positive note. Where do you see real success when you're sort of talking about areas and parts of the world where you think they've got this right? Can you give me a few examples of perhaps countries or regions where you think they've got their policy structure right and they're actually sort of delivering in terms of cost-effective renewable energy?
Well, I mean, if you look at rapid uptake and cost-effective uptake, there are a number of examples. For example, Brazil has an auction system for its renewable power. And if you look at what happened in the prices in these auctions for wind, then they've come down from $90 cents, or say $9 per kilowatt hour about 5 years ago to the last auction $4.50 per kilowatt hour. So very low cost. So that seems to be a policy that works, and it has resulted in gigawatts uptake. So we're not talking small projects. If you look in Africa, Ethiopia is making great progress in its hydropower development. South Africa is now making good progress in its whole portfolio of renewables. So if you look in Asia, the uptake in China is the largest in the world, and that's now also moving into solar. Japan, very different drivers, but also now you see very rapid uptake of solar PV starting. There's more than 5 gigawatts expected this year. So there's a whole range of countries with ambitious goals, with consistent policies, and cost-effective policy approach. And cutting the red tape is a big part of it. It's important to make it a public-private partnership. So it's not only the government, but you do try to do it together with the private sector.
And a final point, we're seeing many stories coming out of countries like China, which is pushing out a number of pilot carbon trading schemes. There are a number of other countries around the world which are running sort of similar, with slight variations. How important is it that we see the sort of continuance of carbon trading, emissions trading, and that concept of there being a price on carbon for the renewable sector to really flourish?
Well, if you look at the countries which have shown rapid uptake in recent years, it's not necessarily the countries that have a carbon price in place. It's the US, where it's based on tax reductions. Mm-hmm. Brazil is basically a portfolio standard. It's China, where it's also very much top-down. So a carbon price can help, but I think it's important not to base a policy only on the carbon price, because you've seen what has happened in Europe, and for sure that is not an advertisement of banking on such a policy instrument alone. But I mean, it's clear that if you would have significant carbon prices, it would also benefit